honestly don't even remember what I said, but it must have made enough of an impact on him that sometime later he came back and apologized to me. And I remember talking to him about this perception and this dynamic of that women are not seen as riders, they're seen as accessories. And it was right around that period of working on the demo truck that I put my foot down and I was like, I am tired. I'm tired of being an accessory. I'm tired of being perceived as an accessory. I want to be a really skilled rider. Welcome to Two Track and Tarmac, a podcast dedicated to the adventure motorcycle rider. The rider that frequents both the street and the trails on the quest to answer the ever-burning question, I wonder where that road goes. I'm your host, Cassie Meyer. I own and operate Clear Moto Motorcycle Rider Training. I've been a professional coach since 2019. My goal with this podcast is to give a female's perspective to the adventure riding segment, motorcycle community, and the industry. The views and opinions expressed on Two Track and Tarmac are those of the talent and guests alone, and may not necessarily reflect the official policy or opinion of any organization. The content provided is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We will be discussing motorcycle-related topics, which may include motorcycle riding suggestions and techniques. Two Track and Tarmac is not responsible for any injuries, losses, or damages that you may experience when acting on your own. In this episode, I want to discuss what I think it means to be an accessory. Now, this is specifically about how women are accessorized around motorcycles in the industry and in the community. I will be drawing from my own personal experiences and expressing a lot of my own opinion about what it means to be an accessory. In no way am I here to shame women who make a living or even just make money off of modeling with motorcycles or being umbrella girls or being those bikini babes. Like, if you're making money, then by all means make money, because advertising still wants it, sex sells, and those calendars have to just keep going, right? So if this is how you make money, I am not here to shame you. I'm only going to express my personal experience and my opinion about being an accessory and what that means for me as a woman in the motorcycle industry and in the community. Let me explain what an accessory is by definition. An accessory is a thing that can be added to something else to make it more useful, versatile, or attractive. And what I mean by an accessory in the motorcycle realm is just that, being added to something like a motorcycle to increase its usefulness, versatility, or attractiveness. Now, generally speaking, we're talking about attractiveness here. Sex sells, and it always has, and it always will. Advertisements, as well as motorcycle manufacturers, have used women to accessorize their motorcycles for decades. Historically, motorcycles were generally being sold to men, and so by slapping a beautiful woman on or next to their motorcycle was going to attract men into looking at and maybe considering purchasing that motorcycle. The perception, of course, being that, well, if you buy the motorcycle, then you're going to get the babe. That's still true today. People are constantly thinking that if they get a cool motorcycle, that they'll get the cool babe. Now, I've worked in the motorcycle industry for over a decade now, and I worked for BMW Motorrad, and I would go to the International Motorcycle Show representing the brand there. I would also travel around the country offering demo rides on all of the model year motorcycles. I have experienced how that perception of women being accessories to motorcycles, how that's affected me personally. It also was the fuel to my fire to becoming a more skilled motorcyclist as well. You'll see things in the industry such as models being hired simply just to stand next to motorcycles, umbrella girls at motorcycle races, and then of course you're going to see bikini-clad women either doing bike washes or being part of those atypical motorcycle calendars. Again, if those women are making money doing all of those things, then good on you. It's just not something that I've ever wanted to do for myself personally, is try to look sexy on or around my motorcycle. I'll give you an example of a few things that I have run into while working at the International Motorcycle Show. Now, you're surrounded by all the other manufacturers at the International Motorcycle Show, and each of them is going to represent themselves differently. I was fortunate that I worked for a brand that respected the women that worked for them, in that we didn't have to wear anything that was sexy or revealing. In fact, one year I was really excited because our attire was a nice button-up long sleeve shirt, had a collar, and it was designed that we had to button it all the way up. And I actually really liked that because I felt like I was on par with the men because they had to wear the same thing. So what would happen is I would have people come to me and talk to me as if I had no idea what I was talking about when it came to the motorcycles. And I remember one specifically. I had these two men that had come up and they were asking me questions, and obviously my response had made them think, oh, you actually know how to ride these, one of the guys had said to me. And I responded, yes. And he or his friend, I don't remember the specifics, but one of them had said, well, we just got back from such and such manufacturer, and the girl that we were talking to there didn't know anything about the bikes. And it was apparent to both of us that I was hired because I was a motorcyclist and she was hired because she was a model, and her job was to stand there with the motorcycles and hand the iPad over to customers so they could fill out information and then subscribe to the mailing list. Of course, our conversation evolved from there, and we actually all started speaking to each other as motorcyclists. And that was really refreshing to me. However, on the converse side is that a lot of people would write me off, or they would actually ask to speak to my male counterparts. And that's where that perception comes in, that women have been advertised as accessories, something that just gets added on to make the motorcycle look nicer. And because some of those other manufacturers were actually just hiring models, and there were men models as well, but because they were hiring these women at the International Motorcycle Show, it became somewhat understood that all the other women that were at these shows were also just hired to stand next to the motorcycle and shove an iPad in their face. Again, I was so fortunate to work for a brand that values their female riders. And that's what I was. I was hired to be a rider and not someone to just stand next to the motorcycle and hand over an iPad. Another example is where we had gone to the Sturgis rally out in South Dakota, again with BMW Motorrad, and we had the demo truck set up, and right across from us was the bikini wash station. And no joke, I bet those women made more in a few days than I did the entire week of working. But it also came to be understood that, well, that's what women do, is they wash your motorcycle. And so with the demo truck, those motorcycles are supposed to be clean all the time. And so it was not uncommon for the team to have to wash the motorcycles, polish the motorcycles, like make them look really nice. And anytime I was washing the motorcycles, whether it was at Sturgis or anywhere else, I can't tell you the number of times that I would have a man or men walk by and make some kind of joke about, Ha ha ha, my bike's over there if you want to wash it too. And I started getting real snarky about that because I just didn't like it. I was like, no, I'm washing this motorcycle because it's my job. And so I would shoot back and say, well, I actually charge double. And then they would giggle and ha ha ha, and they would take off. There was one gentleman in particular that just caught me on the wrong day. And he said the same thing, haha, you can wash my bike too. And I honestly don't even remember what I said, but it must have made enough of an impact on him that sometime later he came back and apologized to me. And I remember talking to him about this perception and this dynamic of that women are not seen as riders, they're seen as accessories. And it was right around that period of working on the demo truck that I put my foot down and I was like, I am tired. I'm tired of being an accessory. I'm tired of being perceived as an accessory. I want to be a really skilled rider. And so I practiced a lot and I worked really hard on becoming a very, very skilled rider because it was more important to me to have someone recognize me for my ability on the motorcycle and not my looks off the motorcycle. Now, as I progressed into the adventure riding segment, which was a few years after I had started with the demo truck, which of course the demo truck has all the different riding segments because BMW has a really large lineup of models. The adventure riding segment, I feel like, is different in the way that they see women and advertise women. And I think that's because adventure riding is typically more of a single rider endeavor. You don't see two-up riders in the adventure rider segment as often as you might see it on cruiser bikes, for example. There's also this element of just being outdoorsy and being really tough. Like you have to be tough, men and women, have to be tough to ride your motorcycle around in the dirt, in the mud, in the sand, in the rocks. Like you got to get after it. And I think lastly, the other piece is that there's a culture in the adventure riding segment that you wear gear. Like you have to wear a helmet and protective armored jackets and pants and hefty boots, which is different than what you see on sport bikes, for example, which is usually as skin tight and sexy as you can possibly get it. Unless, of course, you're like an actual racer, then you're in leathers, which isn't super sexy. But my point being that there's a culture around wearing gear. And this is where I have to really applaud a lot of the apparel companies because they've advertised women wearing full gear and putting them in these really powerful positions, riding on the tops of mountains or going through a river crossing or whatever it might be, making the woman seem like, now she's got it, she's sexy wearing all that gear, she's a strong, powerful lady. And so it shifted that perception. And I think the adventure rider segment is a little bit healthier in that regard. Again, not here to shame anyone who does make money off of being in the bikini wash or being an umbrella girl. I'm speaking solely from my experience and my opinion about being an accessory. So I just want to expand a little bit more on what I did to combat some of those stereotypes that I felt were being refracted off of me when I was working things like the International Motorcycle Show or I was at a demo event. Some demo events, for example, we would have such a large team that somebody would get assigned to working the desk all day while the rest of the team would be assigned to riding the demos, leading the demo rides. And I felt a difference when I was wearing gear, meaning I was going to be leading these demo rides versus when I was stuck at the desk. Because when I was stuck at the desk, I would have people kind of write me off or not take me seriously because they would come to the desk and ask, like, what bike should I ride? And then I would come back and ask them questions about what kind of riding they do and what kind of bike they have now. And I'd have some of them be like, what, why are you even asking these questions? Like, you don't know what you're talking about. And it was interesting because you could sometimes see it click in some of these men of, oh, like she does know what she's talking about. And then you'd see it click again that they were like, wait, does she ride? And then you'd see it click again and they're like, oh, maybe she does ride because she does seem to know what she's talking about. And it was just one of those where I'd just sit at the desk and I'd watch them rattle it through their brains of like, oh, maybe this woman who works on this team, who just happens to be on the desk today, actually rides a motorcycle. And even on the days where I was guiding and I was in gear, I'd still have some people not take me seriously. You know, we'd have usually 3 lines, right? So 3 lead riders or 2 lead riders, depending on how big the event was. And I'd have some people who were just like, ugh, I'm riding with her. And to be fair, that could have been the way that I was reading the situation. But I had been in enough of those situations to be like, yeah, he doesn't think I'm legit. And for a few years there, when I first started on the demo truck, I wasn't really as good a rider, right? Like we all get better. And I wanted to be a really good rider. And so I made it my goal to become the best and most skilled rider that I could become. And ultimately, that is what led me to becoming a coach. I had the opportunity to go to the BMW US Rider Academy and take a class there. And then during that class, actually after the class, I was invited back to start their coach and training program, which is amazing. And that was all because I no longer wanted to be an accessory. It was more important to me to have someone recognize me for my riding skills above all else. I wanted someone to watch me ride by or watch me do a specific maneuver and go, wow, she's a good rider. And it did. It started to show as I progressed and as I was on the demo truck for longer. What would happen is I would get compliments from people who had ridden with me or had seen me moving the bikes around or just being with the motorcycles, riding the motorcycles, and they would make comment that was so much nicer than, oh, you ride a motorcycle? Oh, you want to wash my motorcycle? They'd say, wow, you're really good at this. Like, I wish I could ride like that. Or, I want to ride with you next time. And that's when I knew I'd made it. Like I had moved out of the accessory realm and moved into being a motorcyclist, a female motorcyclist that was going to be taken seriously. And now I don't feel that same angst about people not taking me seriously. Because if I meet someone who doesn't think I can do it, I don't need to show them my resume. I don't need to throw a leg over a motorcycle and prove to them that I can, because I know that I can. And I know that I probably ride better than they do. Because something else I've learned being in the industry is usually the ones that say the stupid shit like that and say things to women like that, they're usually not even that good, because they've been on my demo rides and they've said stupid things, and then I see them ride and I'm like, oh no, that's painful to watch. And gosh, another one I would get too was, I've been riding longer than you've been alive, which of course was always one of those where I'm like, time, sir, does not make you a good rider. It just means that you've held a license that long. It doesn't mean that you're actually any good at it. Again, because I'd have those same guys on my demo ride and I was like, oh, wow. And you're skilled because you've been doing this for 30 years? So it's just nice. It's nice to be in a position where I have the riding skill, which has given me a tremendous amount of confidence. And I also think that has changed my aura when I am around other people and other motorcyclists. I don't have to pretend. I am good. So if you feel like you're having a similar situation with accessories and not being taken seriously and the perception that the public has about women and motorcycling and how those go together, because maybe in some cases the only way that someone does know women and motorcycling is on those sexy calendars. Maybe that's the only place they've ever even seen the two together, and so it's harder for them to understand that, oh, you can ride them, and you can ride them well. So I'd love to know what you've experienced, how you feel about women as accessories in the motorcycle industry and in the community, how it has impacted you. Maybe you are the person who is in those calendars, or maybe you're the person who, like myself, was getting these comments that irritated you. And either way, maybe both of you are the kind of person who wants to be a really skilled motorcyclist. I want to know how these accessories, women as accessories, has formed you as a motorcyclist. Of course, I also want to hear from men. I want to know what your thought is about women as accessories, women in advertising, whether you like it, whether you think it's becoming distasteful as we are moving into the 21st century. Go ahead and throw them down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. Thank you for listening to Two Track and Tarmac, my podcast dedicated to you, the adventure motorcycle rider. If you are enjoying this podcast, please consider subscribing and sharing it with a friend. If you're interested in even more motorcycle content, such as training, tutorials, and my monthly newsletter, you can subscribe to the Clear Moto Patreon page. Your support, both through the podcast and through Patreon, helps me do what I adore doing, which is sharing my motorcycle knowledge with you. Thank you again for listening to Two Track and Tarmac, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.